reading, and back specifically to the Choshen Mishpat, this breastplate that sat over the chest of the Kohen Gadol with 12 stones in 4 rows of 3, and the Urim V'Tumim inside, bringing which was a kind of oracle, right? That gave answers to hard questions in judgment. And this is specifically about judgment, right? The Choshen Mishpat is judgment. And at the end of the description of it, if you look at verse 30, we read that inside the Choshen Mishpat, the breastpiece of decision or judgment, you shall place the Urim and Tumim so that they are over Aaron's heart when he comes before Adonai. Thus Aaron shall carry the instrument of decision. Literally, it's v'nasa Aharon et mishpat b'nei Yisrael. He will bear the judgment of the people Israel on his heart before God always. And Sforno on this, the medieval commentator says, mishpat b'nei Yisrael al libo, that he should pray about them, that they be exonerated in judgment before God, right? That he should always want compassion for them. And certainly that's a big piece of what this Choshen Mishpat is about. But I want to focus very specifically on an insight of the Kli Yakar, a later commentator, who notes that the description of the ephod and of the Choshen Mishpat uses a word that is only used with respect to this garment and its parts, the ephod, the apron, and the breastplate that is part of it. And you can see it in verse 15, where it says, Ve'asita choshen mishpat ma'aseh choshev. And this word choshev is used only in connection with this garment, not the rest of them. There are 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol, including the tzitz, and only with respect to these two, the ephod and the choshen, do we see this word choshev. And it's translated here as worked into a design. Maaseh choshev is like a design. Others translate it as artistry, the work of an artist. And choshev is related to the word for thought, right? Like, chashafti is I thought, right? To think something is choshev. And so the Kli Yakar reads this as a teaching that that the ephod atones for the particular sins in which thought is considered equal to deed, right? Normally, we're only liable for the things that we do, but there are certain sins where we're liable even about thinking them. And he said the one case of that is avodah zarah, it's idolatry. And he says, what does idolatry have to do here? He says, what the Choshen does explicitly is it comes to atone for corruption in judgments. Now this, like his writing here, by the way, he could be writing today. You listen to what he says about judges. So he says for judging, and he's talking about like actually sitting like in a court in judgment over a case, is turned over to the heart and mind, to the lev of the judge. For the judge relies on what his or her heart sees. And it's in the judge's power to say that right is left and left is right. And if the judge says that, this is how it appears to me, who can challenge other than God? Right? Like judges have the power to turn the world upside down and just lie. And if the judge says, this is how I see it, who can you appeal to? The only one who can answer is God. And so the Choshen was placed on Aaron's heart because judging is a matter of the heart. And that's why it says Choshev, to atone for the thoughts of the judge, and to teach that perverting judgment is equivalent to avodah zarah, right? Is equivalent that if you're a judge, or if you appoint a judge who is not appropriate, it's like planting an asherah. It's like planting a tree that gets worshipped in the temple, and it's prohibited as idolatrous worship. Okay, adkan lashono. That's what the Kliyakar does, and I didn't want to lose his teaching because that's actually quite a powerful teaching about the importance of having judges with integrity in a society. But I want to take it in a completely different direction because I'm really moved by this idea of the language of Choshev in the sense of artistry. And I want to take this notion of judgment beyond the question of formal judgment in the courtroom and the people we appoint to serve as judges, and think about it in terms of all of us, right? Because this passage isn't just about the Kohen Gadol. This is about all of us. And the way that we make judgments, our assessments of other people, and the idea of the stones in this Choshen Mishpat containing the names of the people Israel, and this idea of Choshev as artistry, as creativity and imagination. So how do I want to weave this all together? I want to start with, and I'm going to have to sort of go over here to take us over here. So keep that thought. We'll come back to it. Okay. So first, the image of what this breast piece, the Choshen Mishpat, looked like and how it functioned. So Rabbeinu Bachya, like 13th century in Spain, says, right, we have 12 stones in 4 rows of 3. That we know from the Torah text. And each of these gemstones, and these are beautiful gems, is a different color. And the colors correspond in some way. The particular qualities of these stones represent something about each of the tribes. And so each stone has the name of a particular tribe engraved on it. The total number of letters in the names of all 12 tribes together is 49, right? The rabbinic tradition needs 50. So they say, well, Binyamin was spelled with an extra yud because his name appears that way once in the book of Genesis. So now we have 50. And then they go on to say that added to these names of the 12 tribes written on these stones were the names Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, as well as the words Shiftei Yesharun, the tribes of Gesher, which is Israel, right? The letters in the names Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Shiftei Yesharun totals 22. So now we have 72 letters on these stones. And we also have, by means of this inclusion, the entire Aleph Bet. Every single letter in the Torah, in the Aleph Bet, by which the Torah is comprised, is represented on this stone, on the stones. So now we have the entire Aleph Bet and the entire people of Israel represented in one way or another on these stones. And according to Rabbeinu Bachya, and he's picking up other sources, the way it was written was not that like Abraham's name would be added to one stone. No. The extra letters of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Shiftei Yesharun were added in such a way that there would be exactly 6 letters on each stone. 6 times 12 is 72, right? So, the name Ruvain, they would add the Aleph of Abraham's name, right? And the name God only has 2 letters, so they'd add 4 extra letters to that stone. Okay, so it's this bizarre arrangement of 12 beautiful stones, each with a full name of a tribe and some part of the names of the patriarchs or the people, the tribes as a whole, Shiftei Yesharun collectively, right? So we get exactly even numbers on each stone. Now, what's the significance of the numbers? Here's Rabbeinu Bachya. 72 is one of the names of God. It's the Shem Hagadol, the great name of God. There's a 42-letter name. There's a 72-letter name. This is the 72-letter name. It also corresponds to the number of hours in which God created the world. How do we know this? A Jewish day is split exactly into 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. There's a verse in the Torah that refers to the work of the day. So we can conclude that God only did creative work in the 12 daylight hours. 12 hours a day, 6 days is 72 hours. Each of, right? So that there's a kind of, each stone has 6 letters and there are 12 stones, and each day there are 6 days, has 12 hours. And this is a reference in part to a verse in Psalm 89. Amarti, I said, God says, Olam chesed yibaneh. I create the world with chesed. And what's the significance of that? The numerical value of the word chesed is 72. So now what we have is Rabbeinu Bachya suggesting to us that this Choshen Mishpat with 12 stones and 72 letters symbolizes God's kindness and our kindness, and the way in which the entire creation of the world is built and sustained through chesed and through the merit of the people Israel in our totality, right? That's his notion here. The very world is at stake in this. He then says on the Urim V'Tumim, the nobody knows exactly what these things are, but Urim is comes from the word light, to enlighten, leha'ir, to make light, and tumim, they say, is associated with the word tamim. And he notes the rabbinic tradition of the way that the Urim V'Tumim worked as an oracle to answer difficult questions and bring God's answer. And the way it worked is that he would consult God with the Urim V'Tumim, and the light would shine to illuminate particular letters in the stones. Right? So I don't know, it's like a game show, where like all of a sudden particular letters light up, right? And the Kohen Gadol would have to put them in the right order to find the answer. So he says that the names Urim and Tumim reflect the two different ways in which the letters on these stones have power. And he says one is through the power of the letters to light up in the eyes of the Kohen. So with his eyes, he would see the lights, and therefore that's called Urim because it's light. But also through the power of the letters to enter the heart of the Kohen, who knows how to arrange and join the letters to form the words that will answer the question. And through this power of the letters, the heart of the Kohen was revealed to be, or was made to be, tamim, whole. Because the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit in his heart, was doing the ordering and the combining of the letters to create an answer in judgment. Okay? That's Rabbeinu Bachya on this image. Now, what I want to suggest here, first of all, just sit with this image a little bit. Like think about what's going on here. We have a person who symbolizes our ability to bring wholeness and goodness and kindness and compassion back into the world. And he does this in large part, by having the names that represent everyone on these beautiful, beautiful stones of different colors, with all the diversity of the colors representing different personality types of the different tribes. And they're sitting next to his heart at all times. And in times of uncertainty and question and not knowing what God wants to do, he goes into this place of discernment and asks the question, and the light shines through the stones and illuminates the letters of the Torah in different ways, the letters of the names of the people. And note the confluence here of the created world and Torah and time and the human soul, right? The world, the 6 days that the world relies on in the chesed, the time, the hours of creation, the 22 letters of the Torah, and all the names of the people Israel. And the light shines through. And then it's up to him to figure out how to combine them in a way that will reveal what God's will really is. It's such a gorgeous image. And it is all associated with chesed and rachamim, with loving kindness and compassion. And I want to suggest that this is where the role of art and imagination and creativity comes in. Why is it that this is described as ma'aseh choshev, an art? And I want to suggest a couple of reasons for that. One is because doing this is an art, not a science, right? Doing this kind of that judging people, and not judging in the sense of judgmental, but making assessments, how we see people, how we understand them, how we make sense of their behavior, is an art. And also because art plays a key role in being able to do this. Because this work that is so central, not only to leadership, but to all of us, that is about restoring a sense of rightness in the world, is about empathy. It's about understanding. And art plays a key role in that. Art is one of the ways in which we become trained in the imagination and the creativity necessary to get out of our own heads and get out of our own way and get out of our own worldview and extend ourselves and imagine someone else. Right? So I mentioned last night that this fabulous op-ed by Rachel, I think it's Kadish, not Kaddish, but the author who wrote the novel, The Weight of Ink. And she wrote this op-ed about this writing exercise that she's been assigning to creative writing students for 20-something years, but that has become increasingly difficult now because we live in a time where empathy is on the wane, where our ability to really project ourselves into another person is harder and harder to do. And the exercise, as she says, is she begins by saying, write down a phrase you find abhorrent, something you yourself would never say, right? And how difficult that is for students to do. And then the assignment comes. Spend 10 minutes writing a monologue in the first person that's spoken by a fictitious character who makes the upsetting statement. That's what she asked them to do. Spend 10 minutes writing in the first person, in the I, in the mind and the language of the person who would say the thing that you find most abhorrent. And she does this as an exercise in empathy, right? To get fiction writers to understand what it means to get into another person's head. And she talks in the article, which I highly recommend, about how in the last several years, there's just more and more resistance to this. An exercise that she's done with everything with people from grad students to 7-year-olds to, like every day for years without difficulty. And now it's becoming hard and people are resisting. And she's had to adjust the exercise to be a little less scary, right? I think this kind of art and all kinds of art, right? Fiction is certainly a way in which we can develop empathy because we read and we imagine ourselves and we start to care about characters who are so different from us, right? And we don't necessarily like them or agree with them or justify them, but we begin to understand them, to get in their heads, right? Fiction is terrific for this, good writing. Film can be very good for this, but all forms of art that push the imagination, whether it be poetry or visual art or music, that move us into that creative mode, have the power to extend our consciousness beyond our own experience, right? Whether we're the artist or we're absorbing and partaking in it and being changed by it, right? Art instills in us the kinds of eyes and hearts that the Kohen Gadol needed to sustain the world and draw down chesed and rachamim. Right? If you think about the Urim and the Tumim, right? Here's another reading of it by the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar says that they're called Urim, light, and Tumim, because judgment, when it's true, brings light to the world. But I want to suggest the reverse is also true. The image of light shining through the letters of the names, seeing the light of God filtered and refracted through each individual, is what is necessary, is the precursor to true judgment. We can't evaluate another person. We can't understand another person unless and until we see that person as a vessel containing God's light. And also imagining God's light in that way, shining through as the shared humanity of which we are also a part. Then maybe we can begin to creatively understand another person. And so there's a sense in which that radical empathy that is nurtured through art leads to our own rachamim and chesed, which draws it down into the world and is what we call atonement. A sense of the world righting itself, of God's presence returning, right? This is the work. And I want to just lift up like how important, we see sort of arts programs being cut across the country as though it's an extra add-on that's not necessary, when it is absolutely essential to the sustaining of the world, right? And the rebuilding of empathy through engaging in the arts of any kind. But I think most powerfully, especially the written word, right, is actually the foundation of it all. And if we're going to heal our world, this is what we need to do. And become that Kohen Gadol and hold that image close of everybody right there on our hearts, right? And God's light shining through and illuminating various aspects of humanity. And it's up to us to develop the sensitivity to put the letters in the right order and hear the message. And through that, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, a world of chesed will be rebuilt, a world of kindness.